We are back with another episode of the Black Box Podcast. I'm your host, John.
And I'm your host, Ahmed. And today we have a really cool conversation with, I guess, our boy now, Daniel Blue. We're going to talk a little bit about finance and taxes and 401ks and IRAs and Roth IRAs and all of that. And also his business that he's built in the past 4 years. Daniel also opened up to us about his past, and I guess I'll leave it at that for the intro, and I guess we could just hop right into it.
I like that. Leave it a little mysterious. But yeah, great episode. Thank you, Dan, again. Really cool dude. And wish him all the best with Quest Education and his podcasts and his books. The list goes on.
Awesome. Yeah,
Let's jump
awesome
into
guy.
it.
Let's do it. Hey guys, just wanted to shout out Zencaster, our platform of choice for recording remotely with our guests. They're sponsoring this episode, so tune in later to hear more about some really great offers. Hey y'all, we're really excited to tell you about Black Ice, the black-owned jewelry business owned by Sean Moore, our previous guest on the Black Box podcast. If you think about it, Black Ice and like Black Box, it's almost like it's meant to be.
Exactly. Yeah, but we like to focus on investing in the show. So, we kind of look at it as we're partnering up with a asset class. Jewelry is considered an investment, and with the stock market and crypto being pretty volatile right now, and for the most part going down, jewelry, especially precious metals, gold and silver, those tend to preserve their value really well. So, you know, that's also another reason why we think it's a good opportunity. But also, I've worked with Sean in the past. I got a gift from my mother actually for Mother's Day. It was a relatively custom piece, nothing crazy, but Sean was quick, he was easy, he was responsive, the price was fair, and we just met up and transaction was easy, and my mom loved the gift. So
Yeah, if this all sounds good to you, check out Black Ice's website at Black Ice NYC, and at all socials. And there's a V instead of an A for the black. So, as you guys are probably used to with little letter substitutions by us, but you could find stock goods there. And Sean also specializes in custom goods with quick turnaround times.
yeah, Sean does great custom pieces. I've seen a bunch of them on his social media. But yeah, he's also good for sourcing, like watches, specific Rolexes, anything like that you're looking for. He can also get you a better price than, if you're going to, a bigger name shop or someone that you don't really know that might try to gouge you on the price. So along with that, it's also supporting an upcoming entrepreneur. He's had a lot of success. He just celebrated his 1 year anniversary of the business.
Let's get back to the show now. But hello, Daniel. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad we could finally find the time that works for all of us. But I guess could we just get started by having you introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur out here in Las Vegas. I own a company in the financial space, and I don't have this cool Gary Vee story where I came out the womb wanting to be an entrepreneur. The company I own right now, we've got about 13 employees. We do low seven figures, and really kind of just stumbled upon this. And I use the word stumbled because there was a lot of stumbling when I was growing up. After I was 12 years old, my mom pretty much raised me on her own, and there was a lot of financial struggles along the way. And I just remember graduating high school, wanting to figure out a way to pay back my mom, to help her because she took such a brunt of the workload. My dad ended up moving to Mexico when I was 12 years old, so financially, he wasn't there, physically wasn't there, so it was just all on my mom. And during those struggles financially, I just again remember just thinking, man, how can I make money to help out my mom? My mom just worked her tail off and never complained, and just was just such an awesome mom. So got into sales at 18 years old, and I figured out college wasn't for me. I went to college at 18 because that's what society told me to do back in 2007, 2008, and dropped out of college because I figured this is not for me. Sales was something that I gravitated towards. And looking back, sales was something that was a gateway that allowed me to find the career that I was able to have some success in my early 20s. And then, jumped into the financial space about 10 years ago.
of course, we're going to get into it a bunch later on, but when you say the financial space, could you just give like a general overview of what you mean by that?
Yeah, so I literally just did a video that will be on my Instagram and YouTube. My headline to get people's attention was, "Hey, $3 trillion has been wiped out in the stock market," and this is according to an article from CBS in June. They released it. So to put that into context, people that have 401ks, IRAs, about 3 trillion of that money was wiped out, right? So when stocks and mutual funds go down, your 401k, your IRA is probably going to take a hit, right? So, what if you had your money in a different place? What if you had your 401k and IRA in a different asset class? And that's where we come in. We don't sell investments, but we're able to help people understand there's a way for you to access your retirement account penalty and tax free and use that money to invest into your own business. Use that money to invest into real estate, precious metals, private equity, crypto. I know crypto right now is a touchy subject, right? So the point I'm trying to make is you have the
We're pro
ability
crypto
to,
here.
right? Hey, I mean, then hey, you guys should be buying on the low, right?
Oh, I've been buying. I've been
Get
buying
in a
plenty.
Roth IRA, a Roth solo 401k, and then when Dogecoin goes to the moon, that's all tax free money. When your boy Elon just sends a tweet out and it goes up, it's all tax free money. So to kind of circle back, I'm in the self-directed retirement account space, and the problem that we solve in the marketplace is helping people access their retirement accounts penalty and tax free.
So contrary to what normal people do in like a supervised or managed 401k, I guess they have some control over what funds they're going into along those lines. But what do you suggest that people do, or what are you suggesting currently that people do, and what type of accounts are you suggesting so that they do have the ability to choose what asset classes they're investing in and being able to do that penalty and tax free?
Yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to the goals, right? I'll be very, transparent and disclose. I'm not a financial advisor. My firm doesn't sell investments. We are pure education. Everything that you find on my podcast, on my own website, the language that my employees share with customers. We've got over 1,000 customers in all 50 states. It's all Googleable information, right? Like a solo
Yeah.
401k, a self-directed IRA isn't something I just made up today before I got on this podcast. It's IRS approved. It's been around for decades. So to answer your question, it just comes down to their goal. How can we help them solve a problem? And I share this story a lot because it really hits home and it's a heartbreaker, but it's real life. There was a gal out in Northern California, realtor, making six figures, crushing it, and she wanted to invest about $100,000 in a multifamily deal into like some apartment complex back in the East Coast. And she had a bunch of money in a retirement account, like an IRA with Fidelity or Edward Jones, and she just wanted to take a portion of that portfolio, some of her money, 100,000. She had way more, and she wanted to invest it into this multifamily deal. Goes to her financial advisor and says, "Hey, I want to invest into this property. Can you help me?" Advisor is like, "No, you're pretty much stuck between a rock and a hard spot, but we can sell you this REIT, we can sell you this stock that's real estate based." And she's like, "No, like I want to invest into this multifamily deal, this apartment complex. Like, help me." And wasn't able to really help her out. And she ends up taking a distribution, and just to simplify it for people, basically just a taxable event. So withdraws 100K, pays penalties and taxes, 30, 40%, goes
Yeah.
straight to the IRS. So her 100K turns into 30 or turns into 60K, 70K. And she takes that huge taxable hit just so she can use money in her retirement account to fund this real estate project. So, when we talk about conversations we have with people is what's their goal? What are they trying to accomplish? And if we were able to talk to her during this time, we would have said something along the lines of, "Hey, look, have you heard of a self-directed retirement account? Did you know that you can take the money you have in your IRA and move it to a self-directed plan, penalty and tax free, and then from there the 100K can purchase that multifamily, the shares or however she was going to fund that deal, and now your self-directed retirement account owns that asset, and the rental payments, the sale of the property or the refinance, like the profits just flow right back into her self-directed retirement account, and you'd have a zero penalty and taxable event, right? So something like that we can't discover until we understand what the client is trying to accomplish. So it's not a one size shoe fits all.
Gotcha. Okay.
Gotcha.
So is it like the lack of education from the advisor on the managed retirement account side, or is it like they don't want to suggest that you take the funds out of that account and put it into a self-managed because then you wouldn't be paying the fees?
Yeah, it's both, right? We had a customer here recently that needed like $20,000 to fund her online business. And why would her financial advisor show her a strategy that allows her to access her retirement account penalty and tax free, take the $20,000 out, buy product for her Amazon business, get her
Yeah.
Amazon business scaled, and go down that road? Because the financial advisor doesn't make money that way, right? The financial
Yeah, of
advisor
course.
doesn't make money. When the lady wanted to use money in her retirement to invest into that multifamily deal, right? So it's two reasons. One, it doesn't fit their business model, right? They want your money in mutual funds and stocks. That's how they make money. And then two, a lot of it is they're just not educated, right? Like when they get their licenses and they go through their continuing education, they're not learning about these types of plans. They're not exposed to it.
Would, like, with the strategies that you're educating about, would you still recommend, if someone works a corporate job and they have whatever company they work for, they have some kind of 401k matching program, do you think it is still wise to maximize that match rate, and then whatever, like, down the road you could put that money into another account, like, completely separately? Or, like, what do you think about that?
There's a couple things. There's not a one size shoe fits all for that type of answer because it comes down to their circumstance. One, how much of a matching contribution are they going to get, right? Some matching contribution programs are really good, right? Some of them aren't really so hot, right? So if it's like a really really good matching program, then I would be inclined to look into that a little bit deeper. Then it's like, let's just assume that the matching program is great, right? Okay, then where's the money going, right? Like, is it someone that works for Ford and they just get Ford stock? Maybe they're bullish on Ford and they love Ford. There's a argument to that where it's like, well, shoot, if you work for Ford and you get fired and Ford goes to crap, like not only do you lose money in your retirement account, but now your salary is gone, right? So like you're putting all your eggs in one basket. So are you getting shares of a company that you work for? Is it mutual fund based? Like what kind of mutual funds are they? Are they tech mutual funds? Like it just really comes down to what kind of mutual funds. What are the fees for those mutual funds? Like what kind of performance have they been having? Like who runs those mutual funds, right? I'm always a bigger proponent of a Roth IRA for someone that you're kind of explaining, like someone that's maybe just getting started out, or they're a 9 to 5er and they're building up their portfolio. Like really make sure you're maximizing a Roth IRA. Obviously, I'm over here talking about self-directed retirement accounts and controlling your own money. However, I do think there's a time and a place for the stock market, right? So like Fidelity, Vanguard, TD Ameritrade, dope companies, right? They manage trillions of dollars, great software, right? Like they know what they're doing over there. You can get started with a Roth IRA over there. It doesn't cost you any money to set up, and you can still put in $6,000 a year into that bad boy. And maybe you want to buy an S&P fund, or maybe you're like, Apple's not going anywhere, I'm going to buy Apple stock, or maybe you love Elon, right? Like a Roth IRA is a great place to start because you're paying taxes on the money you put in, right? You're paying taxes on the seed. But if that 5,000 you put in grew to 20,000 over the years, that 20,000 is 100% tax free, right? Tax free money beats matching contributions most of the time, right? It's hard to beat tax free money, and you can get that with a Roth IRA. So, and I know I'm giving you a loaded answer, but maybe you're someone that would rather max out a Roth IRA first, put in $6,000, and then if you've got some leftover money, okay, let me put some money in my 401k to match that contribution. You want to think about a few different things, because if you're going to put money in a 401k, how long do you plan on being there, right? If you're going to be there for a really long time, just remember, if you put money in a 401k and it's tax deferred, it's pre-tax money, unless there's a loan feature on that plan, it's going to be harder to access that money if you needed it for a rainy day. Whereas a Roth IRA, there's a little bit more wiggle room to access the money you put into that account.
Like you were saying, it's good to get on top of these things early, especially if your time horizon is large. But an important thing that I learned along the way that kind of switched my thinking about what's a little bit more powerful, a 401k or a Roth, is that if you start out early on in your career, you're probably going to be in a lower tax bracket, or hopefully going to be in a lower tax bracket than you would be later in your career when you might want to access that money. So if it's tax deferred, or I mean, if it's like post tax, you already gave your tax, you don't have to pay that later. You don't have to, I guess, get taxed at that higher rate. But if you use a 401k, then you're going to get taxed at a higher rate, correct?
It just depends. So the best way to explain to the audience is, don't look at a 401k or an IRA as, tax free or not tax free. Look at it as, is it Roth or pre-tax, right? Because you can have a Roth 401k through your job, and that money is 100% tax free as it grows and it stays tax free, right? So if you
Right.
have a job right now and you have a 401k there and they have a Roth component, definitely look into that, because you can take advantage of locking in the tax rate now, and then it grows tax free. I'm not a fortune teller, right? So this podcast might, come back and bite me in the butt. However, I just know the government printed a lot of money, and we're not the best at managing our money. Ultimately, America is a company, money in, money out. And I just believe that the government's going to pull a lever here, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 15 years, whatever it is. My daughter's 13 years old. I just have a really strong conviction when she gets older, she's going to be paying a really high tax rate, right? Right now, we're historically at a low tax rate. I think people forget, like literally Google
Yeah.
tax
Yeah.
rates US and look
Good
in
point.
the 1950s, 1960s. Like there is some
Like
crazy.
40%, right?
Yeah, I mean 70, 80%. Ronald Reagan, he would only do one movie a year because he was at like a 70 or 80% tax bracket. So he's like, dude, why am I going to do another movie and literally get like, 2 cents on, 2 cents, for every, 20 cents for every dollar. Like, so people forget about that. A lot of people are complaining about the tax rates, but they're pretty low right now. So to circle back, a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA, they get taxed the same. The money you put in, you get taxed at it now. And then down the road, if the government raises tax rates, right now for high income earners is, 20 to 40%, somewhere around there, depending on your earnings. Even if the government raised income tax to 50, 60, 70%, doesn't matter with the Roth because you already pay taxes on that money. So it's 100% tax free nonetheless.
Gotcha. Yeah, good point. So it's really more between Roth than non-Roth than it is. But okay, so I guess because you like you said, you're not a financial advisor, so we don't want to keep asking you what you suggest on things. But where does where does Quest come in? Are you guys like let, taking on a client and they're telling you their situation, how much money they make, their what they currently have in their net worth, what debt they have, and then you're kind of pushing them in the right direction, or providing supervision, or
Yeah, so the customer is the captain of their own ship. They decide,
yeah,
hey, I want to invest some of this money into precious metals. I have a buddy that has a business. I want to invest into his solar company. I'm about to quit my job. I want to start my own business. I need some capital to fund my business. I've got 20% interest rate credit card debt. I'd love to just, use,
get that
my
down.
money to
Yeah,
pay off my credit card debt, right? So facilitating that, we're just an education company. So we just explain the options, right? Here's a self directed IRA. Here's how it works. Here are the features, the benefits. Here are some things to look out for. Here are some IRS prohibited transactions. Like the IRS won't let you do certain things. Here's what's called a solo 401k. Solo 401k is a self directed plan specifically for entrepreneurs. Here's how this plan works. Here's what to look out for, right? So, really just pulling the curtain back and helping people understand the options that are out there, and then letting them decide. I always tell people, have a team, right? You should have an attorney, depending on how far along you are in business, an attorney, right? I didn't go to law school. I wasn't born with money. I didn't come from a family full of entrepreneurships. I don't think I saw my first operating agreement until my late 20s, right? So we use an attorney for things, right? I'm not an attorney. I don't know the law like that. So I pay somebody. A CPA, you should have an accountant. I was at an event this last week and speaking, and someone was asking me for some tax help. I was like, one, I'm not a CPA, but two, who does your taxes now? And she's like, we do. I was like, I'm not a CPA, but that's silly. You're an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, right? Like you shouldn't be doing your own taxes. Maybe there's the outlier that's a CPA, CFO minded. They know the tax code. The tax code's always changing, and they're like, I'm going to do my taxes. Okay, great. But for the everyday entrepreneurs like me, I would rather use a professional, right? So what I'm getting at is you should have a team, a CPA, a financial advisor. If you like the concept of self-directing your retirement account and doing some creative things with your IRA and 401ks, then you need to have a company that is familiar with the self-directed space that can give you some options and help you understand what's out there, because chances are you're not going to hear this from your CPA. You're not going to hear this from your financial advisor. So we all can come together and see how we can help you get from point A to point B.
Okay. And
Gotcha.
you just backtracking a little bit. When you say you stumbled upon this Quest education in general, was it like because you had started up your career and you were finding out there were all these questions that you had, so then you kind of started looking into it and then building something up yourself, or how did you stumble upon it?
Yeah, so I'm 18, 19. I'm in the sales arena and I'm in the real estate sales space. And at this time, this is like 2008, 2009. I remember hearing a lot of conversations, clients, associates bringing up an IRA or 401k being used to flip a property, an IRA 401k being used to purchase a rental house. I'm like, how is that possible? How can you do that with a retirement account? Because I always
Yeah.
associated 401k and IRAs with mutual funds. Dave Ramsey says, buy this mutual fund, the stock market, right? So that's what I always associated with. So the concept of self-directed retirement accounts was something that I first heard of back in 08, 09. And I'm thinking, man, this is so cool. Like my mom used to bring up the word pension back in the day. Most people are so old school. They just hear 401k and pensions and this whole concept of controlling your own money and using your retirement account now and not waiting and using it how you want to. Dude, more people need to hear about this. So I knew it was something, back in 08, 09, 2010 that I eventually wanted to get into. I just wasn't ready for a career change. I just knew in the back of my head it was eventually going to happen. And it happened right around 2014. I switched careers, jumped into the self directed arena, worked for a company for a number of years, was blessed to be around some awesome people, learned a lot, studied a lot, and was in the trenches, really understanding how all of this works, and had some success with that company. And along the way, a lot of it through trial and error, I was able to, get my own personal finances in place. Where about 4 years ago, I had the confidence and the resources set aside to start my own company, Quest Education, and we've been jamming for the last 4 years.
Podcasting remotely can be challenging, but with Zencaster, the process becomes much easier. Zencaster is an all in one web based solution that makes the process pretty painless and simple. Um, Zencaster allows to bring you guys, our listeners, the best quality by providing crystal clear audio and gorgeous HD video when we record with our guests. Zencaster is also easy to use for new users and guests. So, when we have people on the podcast who haven't used the platform before, we pretty much just tell them to show up with a computer, mic, and headphones, and you're pretty much good to go. Um, Zencaster is pretty plug and play. But from local recording to automated post production tools, you don't even have to leave the browser to finish off your episode. Use the code zen.ai/blackbox and enter our promo code blackbox. You'll get 30% off the first 3 months of Zencaster Pro. It's time to share your story.
I did want to ask one general question before we really dive into Quest and a bit more about your background. But how would you describe the main differences and similarities perhaps between an IRA and a 401k? I know this is probably a very general question, but it's probably a question that many people don't know the answer to.
Yeah. So the analogy I like to use is, well, one, always think of a retirement account either being tied to an individual or tied to a company, right? So with that train of thought, an IRA stands for individual retirement account. So that's tied to you as an individual, right? A 401k is tied to an employer, right? So it's tied to a company, right? So retirement account's either going to be something you set up through your own doing, or one associated with the company. right? That's basically how retirement accounts work in a simplistic manner. Now, I always like to say retirement accounts are retirement vehicles. We've all heard that term before, that phrase. And I literally like to take the word vehicle in its literal term, like a car. So think of a 401k and an IRA as a car, right? Think of it as a vehicle. And what has to go in this vehicle for it to go? You got to put gas in it, right? And a lot of people have said, especially back in 2008 or in 2020 during the Rona days when the market really took a crap in like March, April 2020, right? We all
Yep.
remember that. They're like, man, my
Hmm.
401k lost me money. Man, my IRA sucks. My 401k is trash. It lost me money. That's actually not true. That didn't lose you money. The gas inside the 401k lost you money, right? And the gas, just like there's supreme gas and diesel, right? Different types of gas that make that vehicle go. There's also different gas that make the IRA, the 401k go, right? So to answer your question, or one way to answer your question is think of an IRA with Fidelity. You can put a lot of different gas in it, right? You can buy single equities, Tesla stock. You can buy index funds, mutual funds, bonds, right? So just different types of gas. Whereas a 401k through your job, you probably only get like 3 to 5, maybe 10 different types of gas you can put in it, right? You get a
Yeah.
conservative mutual fund and an aggressive mutual fund, right? Like just your employer kind of has you buy the you know what, right? Like you're just,
Yep.
they're handcuffing you, right? It's
You don't
very
have any
limited
options.
menu. And then a self-directed IRA or a self-directed 401k, all types of gas, right? You can do stocks, you can do precious metals, you can do crypto, you can do real estate. You just have a lot more options when it comes to the gas. So, when it comes to the difference between a 401k and IRA, is a different type of gas that can go in it. But I think one thing that is really important to stress is a huge fundamental difference between an IRA and a 401k is the loan feature. There's no loan feature on an IRA. There is with the 401k. And that could be a game changer because the loan feature allows you to actually withdraw 50% of the account value or 50K, whichever number is less. And you can take that money out, penalty and tax free, and use it however you want. So, like the story I brought up earlier of the lady using 20,000 from her retirement account, penalty and tax free, to invest in her online business, she used the loan feature on the solo 401k to do this. She took out 20K penalty and tax free, bought inventory for her business, had 5 years to take the 20,000 and pay back to her solo 401k. There's an interest rate of prime plus two. So we're talking anywhere from 6 to 7% interest on it, depending on when you listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
Prime is subject to go up, right? Prime is the interest rate the government sets, but this interest goes right back into the retirement account. So essentially, you're your own bank, and you're just taking money from your right pocket and putting it in your left pocket. And you've got 5 years to pay yourself back, and there's zero taxable event, and you can use the money however you want. That strategy cannot be done with an IRA. There is no loan feature with an IRA, but there is with a solo 401k, and there might be with a 401k through your job, depending on if you have that language in your plan documents through your employer. And there's not a loan feature if you have a 401k from a previous employer.
Yeah, I'm actually in the process right now of transferring my 401k from my previous employer to my new employer, and I was on the phone with someone from the company, and they told me, they're like, "All right, we have to send you a check, and then you are going to send that check to like um your new like financial institution." And I was like, we like, is there no way to do this like electronically? Like, why do we have to do this with a check? And they're like, oh no, that's just like the way that we do it. And I was like,
No, when I
"Uh,
changed my position in February, I had to do the same thing. Except what I did, instead of transferring the money from my previous employer's account into into the current employer's account, I actually just took the money, opened up self managed IRAs, well, 401k and then a Roth IRA in Fidelity. So I get a
really?"
little bit more freedom, like you just said, but still not exposure to all asset classes.
Because so my new financial institution with my new company, is Vanguard, right? And they told me that the check like the check is made payable to Vanguard, not to me, right? So it's Vanguard, I think, on behalf of me.
Yeah, like
Um,
FBO. Yeah.
yes,
Yep.
and I don't know. I that entire process, like
Yeah.
that I'm currently going through, just didn't really make sense to me that we're using checks or that this is the way that it has to be done, right?
I will tell you, man, that's something my team deals with on a daily basis, and it is pretty wild. It's 2022, and I can be. I like to run, so I'm a long distance runner. I could literally just have my phone and just walk into 7-Eleven and grab a Gatorade and then just use Apple Pay and buy something and then walk out of the store, right? Now, I know buying a Gatorade is a lot different than, sending $100,000 check, right? But it's like, come on, man. Like, you guys are billion-dollar, trillion-dollar companies. Like, there's no wire. Like, we're still sending checks out. Like, you want me to fax you something too? So it's wild.
Well, also too, it's like a little uneasy for most, I would assume, to get like a huge check for your retirement account value and then just have it on your person until you get it into the next account.
Yeah, yeah.
Like for
They're
God
just
forbid
going
something
by
happens.
the 60-day rule, right? They're just saying, "Hey, man, like,
Yeah.
get this money within 60 days, and there's no taxable event," which is true, but it's like, really, we got to go down this road.
Yeah. All right. I guess I may have taken us a bit off track with that, but I guess I wanted to talk a little bit, Daniel, about your background. So when we were talking in Podmatch, and even your description, you mentioned that like so basically you were a recovering drug addict. Um, do you want to speak to that, or is this like a sensitive topic, or is this something that
No, man. I know.
you've learned?
I just have it on my press kit, and then when I get asked the question, I'm like, "No, we can't talk about that." No, man, I'm an open book. So when I started off my story, 12 years old, parents got divorced, dad moved to Mexico. It's just my mom and I. That was a pivotal moment. It's interesting. I'm not the only one that had some kind of issues growing up. I think we can all look back at some challenges that we had in our younger life and we can draw upon those. And it really does make or break us. And I was grateful enough that I had an awesome mom. Like, she's an MVP, she's my superhero. And when my dad moved, it crushed my soul. My dad was my soccer coach. My dad was like my homie. Like, we were really tight. So when he moved, and never came back, I never got closure until I was much older, right? Like an adult. So I didn't know why he left. How come he never came back? Is this my fault? Why my parents get divorced? Like, what the heck is going on? And my mom's not giving me any answers. And she did that to protect me. But the reason I bring all this up is because I held on to a lot of resentment, a lot of anger. And, in high school, I started looking up to other people that were not good influences. I started doing alcohol and drinking alcohol, doing marijuana, skipping school. And I just barely stumbled in high school. Graduated high school, and then I'm still hanging out with the wrong crowd. And I start seeking ways to mask my anger, my emotions, and that's really why people usually end up doing hardcore drugs, is they're just trying to suppress their feelings. So I ended up using oxycontin from 18 years old to about 20, and that was my way of suppressing my anger and my resentment. And for those of you that don't know, oxycontin essentially is heroin in the form of a pill. Super addicting. And got really, really addicted to that. Every single day, I'm doing about 1 to 2 Oxy 80s. For those of you that do not know, an 80 is like super, super small. If you cannot see on the camera, I mean, it's like a fraction of the size of a dime. Like, I mean, like, take a look at a thumbtack. It's like smaller than that. And one of those bad boys sold for like $60, $80. And I was
Yeah.
going through one to two a day. And I was spending a lot of money, right? So, I'm going through all of this, and there's really no end in sight. Like, there's nothing stopping me from stopping using. I tried to stop a couple times just because I knew like it was the right thing to do, but I kept relapsing. And I end up getting a woman pregnant when I'm 18 years old. And that didn't slow me down. I was just like, whatever. I was just so high that I just kept on doing what I was doing. I ended up not being in the delivery room when my daughter was born, and that still didn't wake me up. And I remember my mom pulling me aside one day, and she's like, "Look, MFer, if you do not show up in your daughter's life, like I will disown you." And I just remember that shook me. So I ended up calling my daughter's mom, say, "Hey, can I see, Bella?" So that was 2 weeks into Bella's life. So I didn't see my daughter until she was 2 weeks old. And I saw her, and I remember holding on to my daughter and looking at my daughter and just coming to a conclusion of, man, like this is what it's like to have a child. Like my blood is in her blood. Like this is surreal. And then I immediately start thinking about my dad, thinking, man, I'm sure my dad felt the same way. And you know what? My dad made a lot of mistakes, but he was a really good dad for when he was around. And it's just like something switched, guys, where like I immediately stopped being a victim and I started becoming grateful because I was a victim up until that point. I remember being 13, 15, 16 years old, looking at my friends that had their dads, and I'm thinking, man, like, how come Brendan has his dad? Like his dad gets to
Yeah.
pick him up from school. His dad's showing him how to, talk to girls. His dad's showing him how to tie a tie. His dad's showing him how to drive a clutch manual car. Like, how come I don't get that? Like, so it was like, poor me, woe is me. But
Yeah.
then when I held Bella in my arms when I was 19 years old, it switched. Instead, I was like, man, I'm so grateful that I had a dad up until I was 12 years old. The dad I had was freaking a stud. Like, I'm so grateful. Thank you, God, that I had an amazing dad for the time I did. And some people don't even have a dad. So I'm grateful that I even had one. And if people have a dad, there's some people that have a dad that's a freaking piece of crap their whole life. And at least that's not my situation. So, like, I'm thinking about all these things, and it's like I had this epiphany, and like I immediately forgave my dad at that time. And, I still didn't stop using drugs. I say all this, and you think, well, he would have stopped using drugs that day. Unfortunately, not, because I tried to get clean from OxyContin, and I kept getting sick. Like literally, what happens if you don't use
With
heroin?
drugs so strong, you start
Yeah,
to
I mean, I'm throwing
withdraw
up.
more. Yeah.
I have diarrhea. I mean, I have everything, right? So it's like I kept trying to get clean, and it wouldn't change. And November 2009, my daughter is 6 months old at this time, and it's Thanksgiving Day. My mom was making turkey. Bella was at my house. And I remember telling my mom, "Hey, I'm going to go grab a Red Bull. I'll be right back." But that was a lie. I went and tried to get some pills. And no one was picking up. No one was picking up the phone. No one was coming through. And I'm all out of pills at this time. And after about an hour, I realized, man, I'm not going to be able to get high today. And I'm in my car. And I remember thinking, having a conversation with myself, like, dude, like, what are you doing with your life? Like, it is Thanksgiving Day, and your daughter's 6 months old at the house waiting for you. And dude, you are a piece of scum. Like, your daughter is young enough to not know how big of a piece of shit you are. What's gonna be her reaction when she's 5 years old, 10 years old? Like, you're really not even in her life right now. Like, yes, you're there, but you're not. And you're doing the same thing that your dad did to you. Like, and I start having that conversation in that rock bottom moment. And at that point, that's when I quit cold turkey. I ended up moving to Las Vegas like that week, that month, because I knew if I could change my environment. At the time, I lived in St. George, Utah, which is about 2 hours away from Las Vegas. I knew if I could change my environment, that I could get clean. Because what happens is, and this is, I think, a lesson for everyone, desperate times call for desperate measures. You have to change your environment if you want a different result. And I was not getting the result I was seeking. So I needed to change my environment. And I was confident if I could be in a new city, a new phone number, new friends, new associates, that I could kick Oxycontin once and for all. And I moved to Las Vegas end of 2009. And I've been in Las Vegas ever since. I've been clean since Thanksgiving 2009. My daughter is 13 years old. I literally just posted a picture on my social media of her and I, first day of school. I took her to school today. She lives with me. So it's been quite the comeback story from that perspective. But it did take some time for me to forgive myself for not being there for my daughter when she was born. However, we can't beat ourselves up. We all make mistakes, and at the end of the day, if you have another day to live, that's just another day to make a difference and make that comeback.
Thank you for
Wow.
sharing that. No, that was a
Yeah.
great story. I feel like also one thing, and this isn't really related to Quest or anything, more just this story and addiction in general. Uh, I feel like people forget or don't, maybe because they can't be empathetic because they haven't been in the same position, but you know, they kind of put a lot of the blame on the addict in those situations, even though they forget that it's like truly a disease. And I don't really know where I'm going with this, but it's more just that.
I feel like I can almost continue on your
Yeah, yeah,
thought. So I moved to from New York to San Francisco about 2 months ago, and my commute to work requires like I walk about 10-15 minutes, and then I hop on a bus to get to work. And whether it's the morning or the afternoon, I will it's like guaranteed I will see people either laying down on the sidewalk, like doing crazy, just absolutely crazy things at like 7 in the morning or 5 p.m. But like what really hits me like every single time without failure is when I see someone who looks like they're my age or younger, and they're just slumped on the sidewalk, and like you have no idea like what how they're feeling at that moment, cuz you're just like you're just walking past them, right? They could be in pain. They could be like a statistic I remember hearing is that on average, like I think it was like one or two people die every day in the city of San Francisco due to drug overdoses. And I was just like, holy shit, like these people, like some, I could be walking past someone who desperately needs help and I'm doing nothing. And I don't know. It was something to me that was like a real eye opener at the entire problem of addiction, and how there's like a negative stigma about it, um, where I feel like like John was alluding to, the blame might be put on the person rather than trying to help the person overcome the problem. If that makes
yeah,
any sense.
yeah. And I guess just to finish off my thought too, it's like, you said you needed, and part of your healing process was to stop victimizing yourself, but you were able to also figure out what you needed in your environment and around you for you to get clean. But for some people that's not the situation because no one's around to give them that realization or put that thought in their head. But maybe if they were to get that help or that idea, they could do the same.
Yeah, I mean that's why I'm really transparent with my story because I know I'm not the only one with a dark past. I'm not the only one that deals with temptation and addiction. I do have a hot take. I don't believe, and there'll be people that don't agree with me. I don't believe that addiction is a disease. I believe addiction is a choice. Now, there are some outliers, right? Like there are some legitimate mental illnesses where, that person you're describing in San Francisco that's on the side of the road that's just high on heroin, maybe they legitimately have schizophrenia, right? Like they legitimately have a mental illness and, there's some illnesses behind that and they're using meth to cope, right? Like so I'm aware of that. But, I think most of the time it's a choice, right? Like choose your hard. It's hard to deal with life, when you're sober, right? Like that was probably the hardest part is not the withdrawals. It was 6 months after being clean, being past the withdrawals. And then when adversity hit me, when a challenge faced me, when I got a curveball thrown my way, how can I manage my day? How can I get through this without just being like, you know what, dude, this problem I'm dealing with right now, it can wait. Let me go snort something in my nose. Let me feel better. Right. Like that's what, the drugging me wanted to do. Right. And that's maybe people listening to this have, a family member or they themselves have dealt with it. But, ultimately, it's how bad you want it. And you're right. I was blessed to really have my mom, be there to give me some words of, encouragement slash I'm not going to enable you mf'er, like I am going to desert you. I'm going to completely leave your life if you do not show up for your daughter, right? So that's huge. I feel for people out there that don't have family and things of that nature. I do think there's just when there's a will, there's a way, right? Like there's a ton of support groups out there. There's AA, Narcotics Anonymous, NA, right? Like church groups. Like there's a lot of people, that want to help people, right? But you can't help people that don't want to help themselves. And for a really long time, I didn't want to help myself because I was in my own way. And I think ultimately there's a path that I took, and there's a path that everyone takes, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer for other people to find the light at the end of the tunnel, and sometimes unfortunately people don't find that light, and a lot of it has to do with they're just in their own way, they know it, they don't want the help, and that's just what they choose.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a very interesting perspective, especially given your past. It is, like, to me, very interesting to hear that. Because I've heard very similar um perspectives, where it's like it's almost like as if they're doing it to themselves, but is like the element of like physical addiction, right? Does that, like, could you make an argument for that superseding like anyone's like mental strength to say like, no, I'm not going to do it?
I
Yeah, I
get
mean that's real talk, right? So like I'll just keep it, super real with your listeners. So when I got off of Oxycontin, I tried to get clean 5, 10, 15 times. And every time it was take some methadone. Because you can, but just quitting cold turkey, going from doing, 80 to 160 milligrams of oxy one day and then the next day quitting and not doing anything the following day and the day after, like you're going to get hit hard with withdrawals. So popular drugs, it's funny, they give you a drug, the doctors, right, the
yeah.
pharmaceutical industry, they give you a drug to get off a drug, right? So the drugs that are popular, and I don't know these days if they're so popular, but methadone, Suboxone, right? Those are, essentially they help with the crave. You're not high, but it's like you're high, but you're not high, right? So I would take methadone and Suboxone, but it just wasn't enough for me. Like I would do it, and then 3 4 days later, like I would get in a fight with my the mother of my daughter, and then I'd get mad and being dramatic and immature, and then I would just go get like really high, right? So whatever the excuse was, I just never was able to get past it. But when I finally hit that rock bottom, like I told you guys in November, Thanksgiving 2009, I remember I did Suboxone for like 3 days. And the way you're supposed to do it is you're supposed to take a little bit of it every single day, and you take a smaller portion every day, and eventually until you wean off of it.
Yeah.
Like the third or fourth day, I remember taking like the smallest of smallest crumbs, like, and you put it under your tongue. And I just remember like that fourth, fifth day, I was like, dude, what am I doing? Like, I'm really taking like a smallest of smallest crumbs, like literally like you guys seen like Himalayan salt, like salt
Yeah.
chunks, like just like that, but even smaller. And I was like, dude, I'm just gonna stop cold turkey. So I stopped the next day, and like I started getting the withdrawals. What really helped me with the physical withdrawals for the first 30 days was weed. Like marijuana, like super helped me, like be able to sleep. Help with some of the limitations that I started to feel physically. It's funny now, and it's probably because they put way too much chemicals in the weed now. Like, dude, I don't even like smoking weed. Like, it gives me paranoid anxiety. Like, I'm not. No, I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good with one cocktail, if that, and I'm in bed at 9 o'clock. But 20-year-old version Danny Blue, marijuana definitely helped me with getting clean in terms of those withdrawals and not having to rely on pills. So everyone's a little bit different, right? Some people had to drink some tequila to kind of take the edge off. Whatever it is, that's what I'm saying. Like when there's a will for you to get clean, and my will was, man, I cannot do what my dad did to me to my little girl, like being absent, being gone. I can't do that to her. It was done to me, and I don't like the way I felt, and that wasn't right. So I can't do that to her. So like that was my motivation. And then what's crazy is, after I smoked weed for about a month with those withdrawals, then it's some other issues in the sense of like now I'm completely sober. How do I deal with life being sober? And I think that's where a lot of people relapse when they're clean 3 months, 6 months, a year. They relapse because it's not physical withdrawals. It's, oh, I'm dealing with life now, and I can't just mask it with alcohol or marijuana or drugs, right? So
I mean, this is a hot take that I have, but obviously, different drugs, different substances that people use and abuse, they all have different levels and different, trade offs of positives and negatives that they bring into your life. But well, the argument, not the argument, but the point I was trying to make before is that a lot of people aren't really that far from going to something like oxys.
yeah.
Like a lot of people right now are, struggling to just live sober lives because of the situation that they're currently in, and the environment that's around them, the people that are in their life, and the negatives that are affecting them every day. So I feel like that's where the human aspect that I was trying to bring in before. But yeah, I mean, like what was the things that you would tell yourself in the moments that you were struggling the most to, like, get through it, or tell yourself, was it like reminding you of your kid and reminding you that you don't want to repeat the same things that your dad maybe did, not that he did the same things, but just not being present in your child's life?
I think it's the same things that I apply in my life now, right? I'm 33 years old. I've got a few more gray hairs than I had, back in 2008. Definitely still making mistakes, but more wiser than I was 10, 12, 13 years ago. So what worked for me then, and what's crazy, it's like these days would probably be the days that I would actually be more susceptible to using drugs because of the stress that a business owner faces, right? Like
Yeah.
dealing with employees and dealing with, this problem and this fire and, this didn't work out. And oh shoot, I just lost tens of thousands of dollars here. Like, just different kinds of real life problems, right? But what keeps me focused and keeps me, you know, on a good path and what helped me, 10, 12, 13 years ago was one, the environment. Like your environment has to be on point. Like you have to really audit your environment. Like, is what you're putting your energy towards, what is coming from the outside and going in your brain, is that helping you, right? Is it giving you peace? Is it giving you prosperity, right? Is it doing those things for you, right? Is it moving the needle, right? Maybe it's eliminating that person in your life, that friend from high school that just isn't good for you, right? And that sucks because you went to school with them, you guys know each other's families, but they're just not right for you. And that's okay. Not everyone is meant to be your friend forever, right? So, your environment has to be really on point, right? I don't watch the news. I'm very careful on what I read. I'm very careful on when I do scroll social media, what's in my feed, right? Because I want to make sure what's coming in my brain, I'm feeding it, right? I look at our brain as a plant, a tree, right? And it's either growing or it's dying. And a way that it can grow is the type of nourishment you provide, right? So that was really big for me back in the day. I surrounded myself with some really high level people, positive people. When I say high level, I'm not talking about like millionaires. I'm talking about just like good people trying to level up, trying to grow and be a better person. So that was really, really huge, and that's huge for me today. And then the second part is moving your body, right? Like I know if I don't exercise, if I don't sweat, then I know I'm just going to be more anxious. I know I'm going to be more stressed, and that's going to make me have weaker decision making abilities, right? I can make decisions better and I can deal with emotions and the highs and the lows if my mindset's right. And my mindset's going to be a lot closer to being really, really strong if I'm taking care of myself physically, right? And I mentioned earlier I do long distance running. Like that's my meditation. I go to the gym. I lift weights. That's my sanctuary. You don't have to do those things, right? Maybe it's walking your dog. Maybe it's stretching for 20 minutes. Maybe it's doing yoga. Maybe it's getting on a bike. Maybe it's going on a hike, right? Like moving your body is so important. And I think a lot of people, make an excuse why they can't move their body. I'm busy or, this and that. I don't have time, right? But I'm telling you, there's a correlation between your moving, the body movement, exercising, and mental health.
a hundred
I
percent.
Yeah, yeah. We both have talked about this, but I feel like I'm definitely an advocate of, getting picking your meditation or physical exercise, whatever you like to do and what's going to be best for you. But when I sat down like post college and started thinking about in high school and growing up, I was an athlete, multi-sport athlete. I never really experienced that much anxiety. Also, I was younger, so I wasn't aware of all the problems that really existed in the world. But once I got to college, I started focusing more on partying, drinking, doing the usual college experience, and that also led to me ignoring my physical health and my eating habits for 3, almost 4 years, until I got diagnosed with Crohn's and I turned my kind of lifestyle around. But when I sat down and compared how I felt on a day to day basis then and how I feel now that I get, cardio every day, I hit the gym 5 times a week, whatever, do the things that I need to do, I realized the effect it had was night and day. And I 100% will always recommend that to people, or like when they come to me and they're talking about if they're anxious about things, the first thing I ask them is like, are you getting consistent physical activity? Are you eating a good diet? Because that's just a start. It's not going to be the cure to people's mental illness, of course, but 100%. And another thing, the point that you made about maybe there's a friend that you had and you grew up with your whole life, but they're just not good for you. I was always the person that felt like I needed to try to bring my friends along with me or convince them to do the same things that I'm doing and better their lives. But I realized at some point along the way, you're going to hurt yourself more than you are even going to help them, because until you fully accept that those are the things you want to do and the changes you want to make, you can't really get someone else to do it for you. That's what I'm trying to say. You have to make that decision on your own. So sometimes you just need to make the hard decision, which could be dropping that person, or, ditching this habit, or taking on this new workout regimen or this new diet. Because even though it's hard in the moment, it's going to pay dividends and it's going to make your life better down the road.
Yeah, I think we should strive to be told, man, like you've really changed lately. Like, man, I've noticed a lot of changes in you. Like, if we're not hearing that from other people, we're not making moves. And you have to be very, very careful when you're told that, because one, they're going to tell it to you in a way where they're casting shade, right? They're not clapping for you. They're not cheering for you. They're not happy for the to see you make those changes. It's like you think you're better than me. As soon as you hear that, then you just know they're not on your team, and it makes sense to just not talk to them as much, right? Like it just makes sense to move on, right? Because ultimately you should be changing, right? And that's the other side is when someone says, "Man, like, dude, I've seen a lot of changes in you, man. Like, you're freaking like you're crushing it, man. Like, I love what you're doing, right? Like, that person is actually excited to see your growth, right? But people that are casting shade and a lot of the times they're just projecting their insecurities on you, right? They're not doing good financially. They're fighting with their girlfriend, right? They're, self-confident, or they're lacking confidence with their weight or their fitness, or like they're just our own insecurities, and they see you shining your light and they expect you to dim your light so they feel better. Nah, like that's not, you shouldn't have to go down to their level in that respect, right? It's, hey, if we've been homies for X amount of years, like I would expect you to want to see me do well. Like I want to see you do well. And like I said earlier, not everyone's meant to be your friend forever.
Yeah, I guess like a closing remark that I have, just because I don't want to take too much of your time, Daniel. But I don't remember who told me this saying, but at some point I heard, and it's always stuck with me, that you are the average of your five best friends, right? Your friends, like whoever, like a friend could be anyone, could be like coworker, family member, like anyone, right? But the people that you spend the most time with, the people that you trust the most, the people that you communicate with the most, are most likely going to have the largest impact on your life and who you are as a person. So, Daniel, when you were just describing like how you felt the need to change your environment to like kind of like change your way of doing things, I that's something that I thought of. Like how your friends at any moment in your life kind of dictate at least some aspect of who you are. But Daniel, thank you so much for your time and for telling us all about your story. It was very interesting to go about talking about taxes and addiction in the same podcast episode, but
Can't say we've
I
ever done
guess
that.
Hey
yeah.
man,
Do
there's a
you,
first for everything.
I guess before we wrap things up, if there's any more comments you want to make, feel free to have the floor now. But also, if you want to just if you want to plug Quest website, your social medias, anything like that, feel free to go ahead and do that now.
Yeah, so just to keep it simple for people, best place to go is danielblue.me. That was Daniel Blue, like the color.me. That's my page. So you can check out my podcast. I have a podcast called How Winners Win. The mission there is to help people win in their personal life, their entrepreneur life, their financial life. And also, I have a book called Blueprint to Your Best Retirement. And the book I wrote teaches people how to make money tax free, how to access their retirement account penalty and tax free. So you can pick it up on my website. You can get it on Audible, Kindle, physical copy. And then I have a lot of free information on the site too. A lot of articles I wrote for Forbes and other publications that you can learn more about solo 401ks and some cool stuff in that space. And then all my social media handles are on there as well. And if I've got your wheels turning and you're thinking, well, shoot, I've got an IRA, I've got a 401k, I'd love to access this money penalty and tax free. I want to learn more. There's some things that you can do on that website that can have you jump on the phone with our team and see if we're a good fit.
Perfect. Alrighty. Yeah, Daniel, I really appreciate it, and thank you for being open about your experience. I feel like that's something sometimes people in the entrepreneurial world, or just anyone that's listening to the podcast in general, forget sometimes when you're in the grind, in tunnel vision. We forget that these are struggles that a lot of people are going through, and to be able to come back from that and get to where you are and build a business that's successful is really great, and it
It's a
serves as
huge
a good role model.
accomplishment.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm still growing like everyone else, so I appreciate the time that we had today and the invite that you guys extended to me.
We
Of
appreciate
course.
it too. Likewise. I guess I'll send us off. So thanks everyone for listening. You know where to reach us. Black Box Podcast, no A in the black on Instagram and Twitter. Black Box Podcast with an A in the black on TikTok. Thanks again, Daniel, and we will see you next time.